All righty. This is the Women's Basketball Spotlight presented by Rising Coaches, the largest coaching tree in basketball. Quick Rising Coaches plug for $8 a month using the promotion code May 2023. You can become a member of Rising Coaches for more relationships, development, and opportunity at risingcoaches.com. I am your guest host for today's first episode of our Women's Basketball Spotlight. And today joining me is one of my favorite humans literally ever, Carly Thibault-Dudonis.
Hi, one of my favorite as well. You'll probably hear my dog in the background, who's also our favorite dog. So we got lots of favorites on the podcast.
Yes, RJ. If y'all don't follow Carly, you need to, because RJ is the best. Overall, 10 out of 10 on the Dudonis family.
Definitely the star of our family.
Yeah. I love it. But just kind of to start out, back in the podcast chair is actually really funny. Everyone's like, "You're such a natural," and I was like, "I hate it." But just to kind of give people like a background, how do we know each other?
So Erin and I go back a few years now. She was our intern. You were our intern at Minnesota, and saved me a time or two in doing all the little things behind the scenes. Helped us get a bunch of great recruits at Minnesota. Did all the kind of creative background for a lot of our recruiting. Was my mini me, and I'm so excited to see you spreading your wings.
Yes, literally. Carly was like, I always tell people there's like one way to be a really good like mentor and teacher, and then being at like such a high level. And then there's like another way of like being a really good mentor and teacher and like bringing somebody like along with them and throughout like the craziness of every single day. And I like always tell people that, and they're like, I wish I had a Carly. I'm like, everyone should have one. Not mine. Someone else can have her, but like, or someone else can't have her. But yeah, the freaking best. I love it. And yes, now spreading my wings, and we're both in different colors nowadays.
I know. And it's going to be so weird bumping you into you on the road this summer. And I'm going to like cause a scene wherever I see you. I'm going to cause a scene.
Literally, I can't wait, but we will talk about that later. Just to kind of start out and get into things, let's recap the Final Four. So just for some background, Rising Coaches, we host events at the Final Four. This was our second annual women's event that we hosted. First year was in Minneapolis at the Final Four there. And then this year we had an event in Dallas. It was really awesome. We got to partner with Wilson Basketball. I thought it turned out super great. But Carly, you were speaking on that panel. Can you kind of talk about like, what was your favorite part about it? How did you kind of prepare for it? How did you think it went? Stuff like that.
Well, the people are always, my number one thing of anything I'm a part of anywhere I'm at. And I mean, you put together an awesome panel of women. And I think I joked to you, I was like, I was the low man on the totem pole on that panel, because there was, WNBA players and CEOs and, stars of women's college basketball, ones that I scouted against and gave us a few buckets here and there when I was at Minnesota. So I just was loving being surrounded by not only strong women on the panel, but you and so many coaches and women that are in the profession that were there. So I think that network of people and the fellowship with amazing women is always the best part.
Yeah, I thought it was so entertaining, just like in general, the personalities we had. I think like the content and stuff like that, but you can never plan for like the incredible things and like the one-liners that people are going to say. And it was just so rich with like great information, great just like little tidbits of like, wow, like I love women in sports. This is incredible. Like this movement towards especially women's basketball is just like headed in such a great direction. But kind of too, like you've been at a few Final Fours, things like that. Kind of like, what's your favorite thing about like overall Final Fours, and what's your mindset going into them kind of in past years?
So I would say the fun part for me is when I've been able to coach in them. So I prefer that every year, but I think for going there from a networking standpoint and as a coach, I think the biggest thing is just to keep building relationships. pick things at the WBCA at the convention that you can, immerse yourself in, find, like, you're not going to be able to probably get everything on the schedule because things happen simultaneously. But pick things that you really want to dive into that off season and that, can pertain to whether it's your personal development or your team's development, whatever program you're a part of, and how that can immediately and help impact and enhance what you're doing. So, for example, if you're a Dobo, go and find scheduling things, go and find Dobo roundtables, go and immerse yourself in things that can immediately grow you. And maybe if you want to be a Dobo and you want to be an assistant coach, go learn different ways to now there's all these different roles that you can do as a Dobo to be on the court. So continuing to grow and enhance. And then I think I always give, especially young coaches, when you're at the Final Four, is don't look at the Final Four as a way to tell people that you want a job and meet people and say that you're looking for a job. Just talk and be yourself. And that, makes a lasting impact on anybody that is, eventually going to hire. It might not be that week or that month, but you being able to build a genuine relationship and carry on a conversation, that speaks volumes. And I think people remember that more so than someone that's going around handing out their business card.
Yeah, seriously. How kind of like from your first Final Four ever to kind of this past Final Four, what has changed from, or I guess what advice would you give kind of going into your first Final Four, coaching eventually in a Final Four that you did at Mississippi State, and then how you kind of handled the Final Four for yourself personally through the growth of your career? Like how do you kind of handle the different Final Fours so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I would say is I don't know that I approach them maybe differently now, other than the fact that I just continue to try to build. So if I met someone when I was 22, of continuing to kind of touch base as I go to each Final Four, because that may be, I mean, you might see coaches on the road or whatever, but it might be an opportunity to catch up with somebody that you don't get to see very often. So just building on that. And then I think, for me, it's kind of a fun part because my whole family's there. So I get to spend time with my family too. So that's always been constant, which I love about the Final Four, with the WNBA combines and draft prep and things like that. So I always look at it as some time to spend some family time as well. But I just think I love being able to see and meet people from all different facets of the game, whether it's in the college coaching side, you get to meet professional, people that are on the WNBA side of things. Now they've incorporated, the D2 and D3 levels. Like there's just so many levels and layers to the women's basketball game, the corporate side, all these other things that we can immerse ourselves in, which is really exciting.
Do you have a favorite Final Four?
I would have to say this might be the cheat code answer, but the Dallas Final Four, it was our first Final Four at Mississippi State. And I just think that you can't ever beat that.
Literally the first day I walk into Carly's office and she has all of this stuff all around. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like she's my age. I was like, how is this possible? It was so cool. Just all the shrines, everything that they do, obviously making it to the Final Four, as a player, as a coach, Coach Burke's been to a Final Four. So just all of the different things that the NCAA does to celebrate that, in that success, I think is so cool. And it's just a constant reminder of just the reward you get for such that hard work as a player, as a coach, things like that. But to kind of move into, obviously it's important to talk about women's basketball on the new women's basketball spotlight. But how for you, just in your opinion, how has the women's basketball kind of changed on the professional coaching side, but also kind of as the sport and, the players, and obviously we have NIL now. But in your opinion, how has it really kind of evolved and where do you think it's kind of going?
We're on the map now. You could have said that to a certain extent when I first got into the coaching profession, which is now 11 years ago, which, probably isn't that long in comparison to some others that will eventually be on this podcast. But, I think we were working into that as I first got into the profession, and there were certain teams and certain programs that people knew about and followed. But now it's a household discussion topic, and it's a household, or it's a constant on, SportsCenter Top 10 and on the highlights and things that, Scott Van Pelt talks about and on Twitter and social media. So I think now that's the biggest change that I've seen, is that we're not just fighting to be relevant, we're relevant. And so I think that's exciting from a coaching standpoint, because you get to help women be ready for the spotlight in the moment. And a team like Fairfield can can, beat a team. And then you end up on SportsCenter and you have a kid being interviewed and you want them to be ready for that moment. And so I think that's really fun from our perspective, that our women feel, important and valued on a national scene. So I think the talent's getting better year after year. And then, you mentioned NIL and things like that. I mean, that's something that's going to continue to evolve. I think it's just kind of reaching the tip of the iceberg right now. And I think right now, I almost think it's too soon to tell what it's going to look like in 2, 3, 4 years, because it's rapidly changing our sport.
Yeah, I feel like it's so cool
to go back and get some of that money, because I was pre cost of attendance, pre all day. I'm like, and I'm not complaining, I got a full scholarship, but I'm like, dang.
It's so true though. Even like I'm like the little from a bigger like Chicago suburb, but I'm like I wanted to do camps. Like I wanted to go back and like I was really close with my like high school program, our AD. Like I was like I wanted to like go back and give back, and like you literally couldn't because it was like the NCAA rules. And I feel like my like of course cute little genuine like naive heart, I would never have gotten like a deal with Chick-fil-A or something. But like I was like, for the kids, come on, like help me. And I would have like donated half of it or something, or I would have like bought someone like a team uniforms, like stuff like that. I think the coolest part of it is like the creative factor to it. I think obviously like however much you want to put into it and stuff like that. Obviously, I think women's basketball at this point was like the most top earned like revenue base. Like you have Angel Reese, you have like LSU in general. I just love that it's like these players are more than just basketball players.
Yep.
And it's like the ability for them to be creative. It's ability for them to be seen as like more than obviously like the incredible things they do on the court. But I feel like it's just like really making people like kind of shut up and listen of like, dude, we're freaking awesome. And like, even just like getting to know my players and starting to like have like, a team and things like that. I'm like, you guys are so cool. Like, do you not realize that? Like, it's awesome. Cause it's just such a fun, like time of life to be able to like spend with,
And we always talk about in like our fan base in women's basketball has so many children and families and things like that you can positively impact. And so you see that in some of these, deals and women that are just going viral and becoming famous on social media, because there's so many people that our reach is so wide. And so you can use it to a really cool, community impact, like you mentioned, that it's awesome for these women to be able to enhance that.
Yes, I love it. Literally, it's so cool. So kind of too to talk about, I can't believe when you just said 11 years, I was like, that's crazy that you've been in this profession for 11 years. But kind of talk about like what's something you have learned kind of at each of your spots or each of your stops, like in your career, and just kind of what you did to like make an impact at, where like be where your feet were at each stop. And then not only that, but like how you were able to be at certain jobs for multiple years and just kind of keep leveling up each year, even though you were like at the same school.
Yep. So I feel really fortunate that I've been able to work for and with great people everywhere I've been, and really drastically different people. And I would recommend that to any young coach, to be able to, diversify who you work for, and gain as much as you can. And so my first stop was at Florida State. And I know I kind of, when we were at the Final Four, I shouted out Coach Sue Semrau. She, for me, I couldn't imagine a better kind of first mentor for me. And she's similar to what you talked about, is she brought me along, and she continually gave me more and more as I got comfortable in my role. And so I was only there a year, but I feel like she continued, I started with recruiting in camp, and then I learned how to do graphics, and then she threw more marketing stuff my way. And then I kind of helped on the court some once Brooke Wyckoff had her baby when I was there. So I just feel like I continued to get my hands wet in different things, but I learned so much from her on just how to.
Sounds very familiar. Shout out Sue. Shout out Sue.
And so I just was able to see from her, though, how she prioritized the student athlete experience. And that's something that I will never, I keep at the forefront of my mind in anything I do. And then I got to go work for Coach Verdi, who, shout out to Coach Verdi, just took the Pitt job at Eastern Michigan. And so from him, and I know, we'll talk about some other things, but he he really taught me just like how to be an assistant coach and how to prepare every single day, how to prepare for practice and how to prepare for scouting reports. And I, I really feel like I learned so much from him on how to just get ready for anything that's ahead of you. And he, again, same thing. He let me, do as much as I could handle. And then I took the job at Mississippi State, worked 2 years for Vic Schaefer, who, again, I think I just continue to accentuate the preparation side of things. And particularly he was, phenomenal of preparing defensively. And so I learned so much from the defensive side of things. I got to recruit at the top level in the SEC with him and just see, he obviously is a winner, and I got to see that firsthand every single day. And then, you and I obviously worked together at Minnesota, and I think you and I would both agree that you can't work for much better of a human than Lindsay. And she just, great humans gravitate towards her. So I think our staff and the people we got to work with every day. And, I always say this, I'm a better boss now. And I can't imagine having been a boss, not having worked for Lindsay, because, she does it the right way. She treated people right. She made people feel valued. And I think that that's more important now than it's ever been.
And very overlooked for sure. Because I also agree. I like joke all the time. Like I peaked literally my first year in the profession. Worked for Lindsay Whalen, worked for you, met you. Anyone asked Carly, she was blocked on Instagram when we first met.
Yeah.
Side story for a different day off air. It was a complete mistake. We have no idea what happened.
It was a mistake, but don't believe her.
Anyway, no idea. But like Shimmy Gray Miller, like just that staff, like Melissa, like kind of being able to like learn at that point, I was like, I want to be a Dobo. I'm going to play it, that's what I want to do. Like I'm super organized, love that. But then like working under you, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is crazy. And Kelly and like everybody on that staff, like even down to like Hammer, like everyone that had like been there, like such great people. It was awesome. But I always joke, I was like, I peaked my first year. Like people work their entire lives to get to the Power Five. And I was like, here I am sitting on the bench.
No, you are it's just the beginning. You're going to do the same thing and just gravitate all these amazing people around you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I hope so. But just kind of talking about, you talked about you, in your first role, like as an assistant, kind of having that title, things like that. Something that I obviously am very excited about.
Let's go.
Me being promoted and finally having the title. And I like joked to Adam Gordon, actually, like the Rising Coaches after our event in Dallas. And I was like, this might be like one of the most like high feeling Final Fours for me. Cause like I'm going to get fired one day, or like, something's going to happen or whatever. And like, I'm going to have some Final Fours where like, I'm not going to want to be there. I'm going to be like, this sucks. And so I think it was really cool just to kind of like be excited and also just to know the realities of, the profession and things like that. But to kind of speak on like a first year assistant, stuff like that. Do you remember your first scouting report? Do you remember, we'll talk about live like recruiting here in a second, but kind of who do you remember, like the school?
Oh, yeah.
And then what?
I'm trying to think if they were still called UTRGV at the time. It was UTRGV, UT Rio Grande, I think is maybe what they were called.
Okay.
I don't remember if they'd switched their name. But I can still remember it because I don't remember why we were going down to play there, but I spent like weeks on that scouting report because it was like the first one. You got your scouting schedule, you get it in like early October. So I spent like all month. And then when Verdi and I went through in his office, I feel like I didn't even like need to look at the film. I didn't look at my paper. I was like ready to go. And I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. And for me, I always tell young coaches, like, especially if you've played, think of scouting reports as like the way to still tap into your competitive side, like being able to out-prepare another assistant, out-prepare another staff. And so that just like got my competitive juices flowing. And so that was my first one. I think my second one was, I want to say Cleveland State. And I'll never forget it because we were up to, I believe, and it was Cleveland State's ball. And Verdi's like, what do you think they're going to run? I was like, they're going to run this. And I like drew it up and they ran it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Oh my gosh, literally. Also, since I've like worked with you while you're doing scouts and stuff like that, Carly's game face is great. There's on like you basically like in a hoodie on the plane on the way back, like watching film. Like she's 3 games out, like literally such a high level person. But I was like, she was probably an elite teammate, like an elite point guard. Like I would probably wouldn't have even talked to you. Like I'm kind of was more like very serious, but I also was like, okay, breathe, Erin, like as a competitor and like as a player. And I feel like I kind of bring the like, comic relief a little bit. But like you, I was like, she is so serious.
Well, I always joke. I always needed to be light before a game because if I was like that, I was not at my best. I was too tight. So I had to kind of be on your end of the spectrum.
You said you need me is what you said.
Yes. But in practice, like, yeah, no, I would have been all up in you.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. But yeah, also kind of what with you going into kind of being at so like right now obviously you're a head coach and you're going into your second year, what kind of what was your expectation? What was kind of like your dream? Like if my first year as a head coach went perfectly, like this is what it's going to be like, stuff like that. Just kind of talk about like, what your expectations were going into year 1 at Fairfield.
Yeah, so I think for us, we didn't know, exactly what to expect because we took over a team that had won and won a championship, and then Lou went to UConn, and we lost some people to graduation and to the portal prior to getting there, and we were able to keep a few that had gone in the portal as well. So we had a very different team, and very talented players that just hadn't probably played a big role before. So because there wasn't really maybe an expectation because we didn't know necessarily our strengths and weakness at the time. But at the end of the day, our expectation was still to win and still to try and repeat and win a championship. That will be it, for as long as I'm here. And I'm sure, anybody who takes over a program, that's the ultimate goal. So, we were a bit up and down, and I think we played the second most overtimes ever in like a NCAA season. So we played to the end a lot. And what I love about our team is that they bought in, they played hard. They really tried to do everything that we asked them. And then sometimes that's hard taking over a team that wins. And so that was so much fun and made it so rewarding that you had a team that's just fully bought in, including, from freshmen to seniors. And so we had, we're going to miss a few, obviously that graduate. We graduated 4. And so we're going to miss that group. But now you go into season 2, knowing what you have and knowing what holes you want to plug. And we were able to, recruit to fill those gaps that maybe we didn't know going into year 1. And so, we're excited and I'm really thankful for the group that we had to build this foundation because we didn't have to, flip a culture and do all that. We had great human beings and people who knew how to win and knew what it took. So I feel like that group will forever be kind of a part of our foundation. And now we get to build on that, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, I love that. Especially like I was able to obviously watch some games and like any of those players would have ran through a brick wall for you 1,010%. Like they played literally so hard, but it was just like one thing you're like, no, like just go, just ball fall in, please. Like they deserve it. Like, please, they do everything right. Mm-hmm. And I think it just kind of also, as the first year, like we just finished our first year here at Buffalo and like, it's probably, everyone says like, at first I thought they were joking, but now I survived my first year and everyone's like, it's the hardest thing you will ever do. Cause like, I was like, I got here, I didn't even know how to turn the lights on, let alone like,
yeah, Dobo.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't even know who to ask to turn the lights on. Like, what do I do? And having to figure all of that out. And I feel like, even too, like you talking about like culture, just how stinking important that is. Like, just how important it is to just like know what, not only like the culture of your program, but the culture of like your league. I feel like the league too, like being able to say that you like went through your first year with the MAC. We're both Macs. Mm-hmm. But just being able to go through that, it's kind of like a sigh of relief. You're like, okay.
Yep.
Like, I know what I'm up against. Like, this is okay. Noted. Like, got it. Like, this is the vibe at this school. This is the vibe at this school. And just like, even knowing where your bus is going to pull in and park and what you're going to eat and just like little things like that. What are you really kind of excited about? Even to like getting your own, recruiting, like your own class kind of, Also shameless plug Lou, like being between you and UConn. I remember I went over to your house when you were selling it and kind of getting ready to pack up and move. And you were like, yeah, she's literally deciding between us and UConn. And it was something where I was just like, I am not at all surprised that this girl is deciding, like, after however many meetings, like your first big like recruiting thing is you and UConn. Like, I was like, I'm not surprised. I was like,
yeah, I think looking back, she at the end of the day, I think she's going to UConn all along. But I like to think that we had a chance for like 24 hours.
it was just funny because I was like, of course, like Carly being Carly in her first recruiting battle.
Yeah, that's something that I love about our staff. Is our staff isn't afraid to recruit against anybody. We're not afraid to recruit against the ACC and the Big East and the A10, and you're going to get more no's than yeses doing that. But I think we have the resources and the location and the academics that we feel like we can recruit. And again, it's all about fit for us, and so you just got to find the right ones. And you might get 20 no's, but getting a yes can change your program. So. I know you mentioned, being able to get our own recruits in and things like that, but I can't stress enough. I said this in my press conference when I took the job, but I mean it to my core of like, they didn't come to Fairfield to play for me. No, none of them except the one graduate transfer that we got when I got there committed to play for me. But I took the job and I came there to coach them and meet them where they're at and love them and value them and win as best we can and, put those guys in a position to be successful. So I'm proud of our staff. My staff is fantastic in kind of building around that team. And so I think that's probably, you didn't even ask this, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of the biggest challenges is figuring out how to, like, you may have a vision as a head coach of how you want to play and the way you want to build towards and recruit towards. But you also have a responsibility to try and win with your teams as well. So kind of finding that balance of building your style and your foundation for how you want to play while still putting your team in a position to be successful and putting them in positions to be successful as players. So that was actually really fun. It's challenging, but it was really fun this year. So I love that kind of blend of both where you get to love on the kids and the team and your women, I should call them, and then put them in positions to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what the question was. I just started rambling.
No, you're good. No, it literally like fit in. It was like basically you kind of what you did this past year, kind of missing pieces and things like that. I think too, more often, like what we're seeing in the landscape, I think too, like especially after finishing my first year, I kind of got to step into the assistant role like mid-year and did a little bit and kind of got my feet wet and got a little like soft intro into the coaching life. But I think more so than anything, it's like you kind of see this new school, old school kind of coaching styles of like, this is our system. This is what we're going to run. I feel like that's like men's basketball a little bit more like we're a Princeton team or we're, whatever, we're going to do pack line, like whatever. That's like kind of what they want. Then they're going to recruit kids to fit that. Where I feel like you have this new school of like, I just want great humans, great people that can, be 3-level scorers, have, skills and skill levels and different skills and a variety, but then making it work and being creative on that side. Would you agree with that? Or is that just me like being?
No, for sure. I think we've actually, as a staff, we've talked about this a lot because I think there is a value to knowing the type of player and the type of maybe system you want to play in recruiting to that. Like I think Iowa this year is a perfect testament of that. If like you maybe line them up pound for pound, like they may not be the most talented team every single night. I mean, Caitlin Clark and Monica are obviously like amazing players. But pound for pound, they probably aren't the most talented team every single night, but I think they recruit to a system, they recruit to a style of play, and it works for them. So I think there's a level of doing a little bit of both, of knowing, the type of player that you want to build around and recruiting to that as best as you can. And then once you have your team, tweaking and changing and adjusting as need be. So we talk a lot about this for our staff, is that we want to kind of become a shooter's U because we want to be a mid-major that can go on and be like what a Florida Gulf Coast does and what South Dakota and Creighton have done over the last few years in the NCAA tournament. And you do that by, all 5 players on the court being able to score. You can pull out some maybe bigger BCS post players and be a tough mismatch for them. And so we've talked about that. And if you can't shoot, if you're going to recruit someone that's not a shooter, they've got to be, you know, elite at something else. And so we have kind of this foundation of some motion and some spacing and some transition that we want to play. But year to year, that may change. As you're a point guard, a scoring point guard, are they a facilitating point guard? Do you have a post that likes to play inside or outside, and kind of adjusting as you go from there. So that's kind of how we've approached it, having kind of a foundation and maybe base level skills that you want, and then adjusting year to year by what your team is.
I love it. I love the talking X's and O's. That's for sure. I'm excited to do more of it too.
Yes. How are you feeling? How was the first, few months of official head or assistant coach?
Yes, I love. You keep saying head coach. Stop that.
It's coming.
No, it's not. Oh gosh. No, it's been super fun. I think I think the hardest part is just, I feel like the hardest part is like people wanting to like get to know you. Like I'm not saying that people don't want to get to know you like when you're in other duties on staff, but I feel like it's just a little bit different of a situation. And so when it kind of comes to like I just had to do like a 2-minute drill media thing, and I was just like, this is awful. Like I want to worry about 1,000 other things right now than having to go like hold them. I'm like death gripping the microphone. I was like, I just got comfortable talking to our team. I don't want to do this. And so I think it's just like those kind of more off the court things that like aren't building relationships and aren't, but just kind of not the politics. I don't really know, like kind of the stuff that you just kind of have to do from like talking and interviewing and doing post-game interviews and things like that. Just kind of from that standpoint, I'm like excited to become more confident in and learn more. But I freaking love it. It's so much fun. It's, I think, something where I'm like thankful that like people around me like love me super well and have pushed me into like this calling of like, girl, you need to do it. Like just accept it and then like do it really well. And so I think just being able to kind of, I've arrived and now I'm here and get to put my, feet under me. And I absolutely love building relationships kind of when it comes to like talking to different players, getting to know them. Like, I just love it. I don't know why. But I think that's also something where like, I have learned that from you too, of just like how intentional you were like with your recruits, how intentional you were with like learning their lives and their backgrounds, and how intentional you were with like meeting their families and stuff like that. Like just watching, I think the staff at Minnesota and how like not awkward it was when you had like a kid, come on an unofficial or you know what I mean? And just the little facts that we kind of knew about them and how much, how much care really went into every single visit. I think that's definitely something that I pride myself on. Like I want that person to feel comfortable. But I also want it to go both ways. So like I always try to be super transparent, especially obviously transfer portal, like with you can't transfer, there's no unlimited transfers. And like I start with that and like all my conversations, I'm like, listen, like I don't want you to get stuck here. We don't want you to get stuck here. Not just obviously in that like blunt of a way, but I'm just like, what do you want? What do you want out of, this next 2 years or whatever? And thankfully, we're now starting to really build and stuff like that. And we don't really necessarily want to go to the portal a ton. But just being honest, even with the recruits, like, can you do this? Or do you love this? Or do you not love this? Or what's your favorite coaching style? Or how does your high school coach? Like just kind of asking those questions. So these players that might not know what they want, they can really kind of figure it out. And I just want to be honest. I don't want them to think that it's like, I remember being so nervous to get on the phone with coaches. And I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be like, hey girls up, like, how you doing?
I mean, that would have been so much easier.
No, exactly. And instead I was just like, oh my gosh, hi. Like I was terrified. And so I just don't want it to be like that. I want the right, the right players in the right places. And I think, that's kind of the biggest thing. And then it kind of can segue into our next kind of closing last section, but kind of talking about life on the road. It's recruiting season, everyone. We're so excited. I just survived my first live period.
Yes. How was it?
I honestly like, it was the scariest thing of my entire life.
Why?
I was literally I'm like my eyes twitching. That's It was just like so, I don't know, it was like very, I don't want to say intimidating because like, you know, we are empowered women and I felt, you know, empowered. I felt like I was supposed to be there and like I worked hard and I'm like meant to be here and things like that. But I think just like it's just a beast and I feel like it's changed so much like even like I'm not super far removed from like college basketball and AAU and stuff like that. I feel like it's just changed so much.
Mhm.
Just with kind of how tournaments are run and parents and like everything's live streamed. And I'm like, this is crazy. It's like really cool. But just very intimidating from just like everyone, you know, some people talk to some people don't, some people whatever. Like I walked in, like I was like, oh my goodness. And all I remember was Becky was like, stay on the wooden floors. Just watch as many games on the wooden floors as possible. I was just like, okay. And obviously, like me being very type A, like I had like, okay, this is like the teams I'm watching. I like, you know,
Oh yeah, you've got a schedule or two for me.
yeah, exactly. I was like, you know, I was like this time at this time, this court, this court, this court, this court. And then of course, like some of them got kind of thrown around and like I like this game was really good. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm gonna like watch this longer. I was like, am I allowed to do that? Like I think there was just the level of like kind of figuring out like, you know, you're not going to be able to watch every single kid you want to watch or every single, you know, it's the first weekend too. So some people that like, hey, we kind of like think we are gonna, you know, vibe with this kid or this team, and then like it's their probably their first time all playing together, and it's like not great basketball, and so you give them the benefit of the doubt. But I'm just like, maybe I'm like not gonna watch that game. The rest of it, I'll go like turn around or something.
Yeah.
And then I think just like I don't know, it was so much fun, and yes, I love it. But I want to get your perspective on kind of like life on the road. What are some of what was your first life on the road experience like your first live recruiting period? And where was it? Do you remember where it was?
My first one ever was in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, which about 3 months later is where I met my husband. So
Interesting.
OGBR always did these ones in Reynoldsburg. And so I remember I got to sit next to Brooke Wyckoff, who I just worked for at Florida State. And so I just remember you probably had a similar feeling where I was the one behind the scenes, like making everybody's schedule and who they were seeing where. And then it was so surreal being like, oh, wait, I have to do that for me now. I'm going to games. But I think, I was able to sit with Brooke and kind of just pick people's brains. And I remember starting the very first tournament, it was like the way they used to do it is they always had like the young kids play first, and it would be like, 7th, 8th graders, and then like, 9th, 10th graders, and then we'll work their way up. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know if a 7th grader is going to be good enough or if they're going to be too good? I remember being like, this is above my head right now. But it was fun. I mean, I can still remember, I think like Taylor Mikesell was one of the 7th graders that I got to watch. And now here we are, literally 10 years later, and she's getting drafted in the WNBA. So that's kind of cool as you go through it. If you see these people that you see from super, super young go all the way through, their 5-6 years, getting recruited, and then 4 years, 5 years, whatever it ends up being in the college game. So I can still remember that though. OGBR sitting next to Brooke Wyckoff.
I love it. Oh my gosh. I actually like funny, but in a different way for like sitting next to somebody. I walked up and I'm like panicking, of course, because I'm just like, this is so intimidating. And then I run into a coach that I actually played for. So Ashley Barlow, and they just took the Cincinnati job. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, help me. She's like, you good? And she's always that's kind of stayed in my life, like checked in on me, things like that. She was an assistant at Evansville when I went there for my first 2 years. Or she was there, I think, just my first year. But I remember like she probably was just like, and I was like, this is so weird. And like she was cool. She was like, girl, you're good. But I just remember like I was sitting there and I was like, this is so crazy. Oh my goodness. And then my college coach for my last 2 years, Coach Banker, we like sat on some courts together. And like I just remember like leaving the tournament. I was just like, this is so cool. Like I got to like hang out with my old coach. I got to see coaches I, played for and things like that, and the places that their careers have taken them, like Coach Barlow, like she's on a staff of like her literal best friends. Like all of them have been together. Like I remember when she took the Wright State job, like left Evansville. We knew it was like obviously like such an incredible move for her. Like we obviously were sad like in that moment. But then to kind of be like on the flip side of like, I hope I get to work with my besties one day. Like, come on now. We're all still like in very early stages of our careers, so it'll be a while. But it's just like super cool to kind of like have that full like circle, and then just like seeing people, and you sit next to people and everyone's like, how are you? Like, I heard you, this is like you just got promoted, and how are things going, and whatever else. And I feel like people that are just like, willing to kind of talk and be chill, and hey, do you need a snack? Like,
oh, you gotta have good snacks.
Can you save my seat while I run to the bathroom? Like that kind of thing. But yeah, so kind of like little kind of funny things. I feel like we could talk about like on the road stories forever. But like, do you have any like kind of favorite memories, things? It doesn't have to be like your first time out, but just like kind of one tournament, maybe one place that you've been to, or one like moment, or even two. I think this is one thing I'm really excited about is like seeing a kid on the road for the first time, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, one day, like having them commit, like recruiting them for a couple of years. Like, I think that's something that is like, I have written down for goals of where I kind of want to be, but anything like that, where you've had like full circle moments, or favorite trips, or kind of like just fun memories.
I probably should say that meeting my husband should be one of my favorite memories. But so, yeah, we can say that I put that out there. But I would say one of the most fun things about it is, maybe it's not just one time, but like when you do get a kid to commit and you've built a really good relationship and you're watching them play and they're playing really well. And then you see all these people like looking at their books like, oh, who's this kid? And you're like, nope, she's coming to us. Thank you. Like, I love that feeling when you have like, especially when you're, I'll never forget, there was a kid that we got committed at Minnesota, and she had an awesome game at the EYBL, and our whole staff was texting, and like everyone's wanting to know where she's going, and she's coming to us. And so those types of things are really fun when you see, like, you're like, yes, we got a great kid. They're the great fit. They're a great person for our program. They're playing well. And that's really kind of rewarding. And when you get to do that.
Yes, I love it. I can't wait. I'm super excited. But other than that, for on the road, any pet peeves? Any road etiquette that we all need to be aware of?
Well, I think it's good to talk and to talk to people that are sitting next to you. I'm not someone that is, unless I know you really well, like I don't love talking during games because I miss things. I'm not a great multitasker, so I don't tend to talk a ton unless I know the person well or whatever. And then I would just say something that I take note of, and this is probably for younger coaches, is being just cognizant. It's hard because you're looking at your schedule and you're trying to make sure you have your next game or whatever, but just being cognizant of not being on your phone a ton, because I think you miss things. You miss, body language at timeouts. You miss plays. You miss big moments. And so, we're all culprits of that. It's part of recruiting. You're texting your staff. You're checking your schedule. You're checking in for your flight, whatever it is. But I think the more you can be intentional and cognizant of being on your phone less makes a difference.
I love that. That is literally, I was very surprised at, I'm literally the same way, because we're not twins, I swear. But I'm the same way where I'm like, I want to know, like, I want to like kind of watch those little things. I want to watch, like, I always say, like, is she a good teammate? What are they doing in between? Because I was the greatest teammate ever. Number one hype man for all my teammates ever, all the time. And that was literally why I got recruited. I was the glue kid. I was the glue kid. Look, we had no college debt. We didn't pay a cent for college tuition. We care about it. But like little things like that. But then I think it was so hard for me to really like, oh my gosh, okay, what court am I going to next? Obviously, of course, I had everything like organized and on my iPad and this, that, and the other. It's also really cool to kind of see like who's a paper writer, who's writing in their books, who's like, it was the first tournament. So there's like, of course, major teams that like missed the deadline to put their rosters in. And so I'm like, oh, who is this? What is going on? Like, how do people know who they are? And things like that. And I think too, like, that was something I was like really big on. Is like, I don't want to be that like newbie that's like on her phone or like chilling. You don't even have a service. So like, what are people even doing on their phones? Cause that was something nobody told you. I rolled up and I was like, well, if I get lost somewhere, if I get lost on court 22,
Yep.
We're
Good luck.
going back. Yeah.
Bye.
Like, rocketing back to Buffalo. Like, see ya.
And then I think, you know, not to be too extreme with it, but like we do our notes on our phone of our kids.
Mhm.
So like there's obviously like you're gonna be on your phone. That's what it is. And you have to, I mean, you can't survive half the time without it. But just, you know, making sure you're paying attention to the things that you need to. And that's, you know, nobody else's job to judge what you need to be watching. It's just what your staff and your program needs, but make sure you see what you need to see from each kid.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Okay, well, I'm so excited to see you on the road this summer.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so much fun. But we do need to wrap up. We obviously could talk for actual hours. Um, Maybe one day it'll be a little Carly Erin podcast
Oh, that'd be great.
in our dreams when we have time and aren't freaking out all the time. But anyway, just to kind of close, this was amazing. You're amazing, obviously. Everyone like always jokes because I'm like Carly Thibault-Dudonis. Like, I have to say your full name just because I like love it and like I aspire to be a two last names lady. So noted. But kind of from just kind of like finishing up, what's your advice for kind of not only surviving the coaching profession and in women's basketball, since this is the women's basketball spotlight, but how do you not only survive but really thrive like in this profession and what's some advice like not only just for like new people stepping into it, but people that, you know, are tenured and have been and coaches that might be even kind of like close to retiring, like good for them. I'm so jealous. Just kind of what would you say like your advice would be for not just surviving, but also thriving in this profession?
I mean, at the risk of sounding maybe a little cliche of like surround yourself with good people. I've been really fortunate to have not, and you may not always get a, you know, a perfect staff or everyone that fits you exactly right or have all the same values, but being intentional of who you're around and then who your kind of support system is, because you don't get to pick every single person that you work with. But you're going to need a support system at different times. And so I think I would say that's gotten me through the hardest times and made some of the most fun times even better, because you're just with, I mean, we spent some awesome times together with great people. We talked about that, but between that, and I think I learned from my dad of just like never stop learning. And I think I have to challenge myself that, you know, now as a head coach is, you know, you have so many things that I'm just learning how to be a head coach, but also still being intentional of like learning my craft, learning, you know, watching the game in different ways, watching NBA games, WNBA games, and continuing to learn and grow as a head coach. Like I haven't just, you know, arrived as a head coach and now it's like, okay, what I know is what I know. I need to keep getting better. And I've watched my dad do that for like the 50 years of his career. He every year intentionally gets better. And so I'm still figuring it out as I go. I make a million mistakes. But I try to get better every single day. And then I guess lastly, and I don't think I really understood this as a young coach, and you're not going to know, I still don't probably have everything figured out, but kind of getting an idea of what your values are, and aligning people with people who have the same values. And so, you know, for me, I live with truth and joy. Those are my two. And I it's funny because sometimes I feel like I'm going to add a third, but I think that's kind of the growth process of knowing of what your values are. So and that kind of helps guide decisions as you go through, you know, which job do I take, which person do I hire, and, you know, what decision do I make here of kind of using your values to guide you.
I love that. I will also manifest. I feel bad for anybody who has to go into overtime with the Fairfield Stags next year, because I do know that will be a challenge.
We'll be ready.
1,010%. But thank you so much, Carly. For those of you listening as well, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting women's hoops. Check out Rising Coaches and stay tuned for the different like hosts and guests and what we're gonna kind of be putting out here. Yeah, thanks.